Here's why you should escape from narcissistic abuse, no matter how hard it is. Recovering from narcissistic abuse is a difficult and often painful process, but it can ultimately lead to personal growth and development. Narcissistic abuse can be incredibly damaging to an individual's mental and emotional well-being, leaving them feeling isolated, worthless, and lost. However, with the right support and guidance, it is possible to move beyond the abuse and come out stronger on the other side. The process of recovery is not a quick or easy one. It can take time to work through the various emotions and experiences that come with being a victim of narcissistic abuse. It is essential to have patience with oneself and to understand that change does not happen overnight. It is also important to infuse every aspect of the recovery process with honesty and integrity. One of the most important aspects of recovery is forgiveness. Forgiving oneself and the abuser can be a crucial step in moving forward. It is important to remember that forgiveness is not about excusing the abuser's behavior, but rather about understanding that the abuser's actions were not the victim's fault. By forgiving, the victim is able to let go of the past and focus on the present and future. Another crucial aspect of recovery is the need to take action to prevent a recurrence of the abuse. This means learning to recognize and avoid toxic people, setting boundaries, and learning to advocate for oneself. It is important to understand that tolerating poisonous people is not an option, and that self-care must be a priority. If narcissistic abuse has wounded and messed someone up, why wouldn't they want to talk about it? Since being a victim of narcissistic abuse can severely damage one's mental health. There is, however, a bright side to this narrative that is rarely brought up in conversation. In the following, you will hear the subject of our current conversation. We'll go over some of the ways a narcissist can permanently change you through abuse. If you want to view everything I upload right away, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Okay, so let's begin. First, if you've been the victim of narcissistic abuse, you'll be more driven than ever to better yourself by learning as much as possible, digging into your past, and pinpointing the trauma cycles that were reactivated by your continued association with the abuser. It helps you understand your childhood more fully, including any experiences you had of abandonment, neglect, or abuse at the hands of your parents. As you come to this understanding, you are extended a welcome to aid them in regaining their completeness and fill a role of parent you were never given. As a result of the healing that comes from following one's inspiration and moving out into the world, people are less likely to fall into toxic relationships or become immuno-narcissists. If you know what you're worth and who you need to be with, you can make more conscious choices in your romantic and platonic situations. The second reason for escaping narcissistic abuse is that it can teach you just how strong and resilient you really are. Realizing that being a victim of a narcissist isn't as terrible as you may fear can help you see that you are stronger than you give yourself credit for when it comes to dealing with adversity. To put it simply, it's a mental version of a fight to the death. So, the bruises and wounds aren't readily apparent on the surface, but they're just as serious and agonizing on the inside. Therefore, perseverance is necessary to win in such adversity. This kind of war calls for courage, and the fact that you can listen to me and read my words is evidence that you possess the fortitude to conquer the barriers in your way. I am curious to know how your exposure to narcissistic abuse has impacted you for the better before we move on. Third, it instructs you in the art of rejection and setting boundaries. Because trauma survivors have developed behaviors like people-pleasing, codependency, overgiving, compliance, self-sabotage, and so on, before ever coming into contact with the narcissist. Simply put, we agree. Being unsure of our own identities, we hunt for confirmation from other sources, which might take the shape of traumatic experiences. That's a guaranteed way to create attachment problems. Although being a victim of narcissistic abuse is painful, it can help you grow as a person. Because of this, you'll have a greater incentive to restrain your behavior when interacting with others. The process is analogous to building a home out of one's own unique identity and sense of self. To err is human. You know your boundaries, and they know theirs. You have a healthy appreciation for both your strengths and weaknesses, and advice on what to prioritize and what to overlook when choosing a life partner. As a result, it promotes introspection, and in the end, you'll figure out why you're here. And fourth, you develop the ability to read people and recognize trouble spots before they become major crises. You learn to read people's minds after surviving narcissistic abuse. You are exposed to the seedier side of human nature. Thus, it can be classified as a type of deep learning. You start to understand people's habits and the ways in which they deviate from the norm. How does a person who has absolutely no integrity pretend to have any? And what does dishonesty look like? You have experienced it all, which suggests that your life has trained you in some fashion. Despite your lack of schooling, you nonetheless qualify. Have you become who you are because you were nurtured by a narcissist? That's why you've matured into such a perceptive observer of humanity. You certainly are. Over time, you begin to prioritize substance over presentation. Thus, it becomes less difficult to recognize potential threats. Consider the indicators as warnings. It is easy to recognize warning signs early on and without much effort, rather than trying things, testing waters, and finding out after 2 months that, yes, it is indeed the same narcissist, the same person with a different face. Consequently, you can save time and effort in the long run by better understanding people and making smarter hiring choices. Fifth, it enhances your capacity for compassion and empathy toward narcissistic abuse survivors. It causes intense suffering that is uncomfortable to endure. In light of this, you have experienced true anguish. Being a part of it and experiencing feelings of helplessness and isolation is something you can relate to. And once you've made it through and healed, once you've learned to appreciate humanity in general, that's when you'll really start to understand people on an emotional level. That's the essence of compassion. Just what is it? It's really difficult to get aid when you're in a situation like this. You understand what it means to back someone up since you probably never had that opportunity. You have a deep comprehension of what it is to be a truly kind person. This leads to overall personal growth. You can now have a more straightforward conversation. We, the people of the world, care for one another as a group and as individuals. It's good for the spirit, and it's good for you. You've crossed a threshold into a more enlightened way of being, if you get what I'm saying. Put another way, it helps a person learn more about themselves. The process of recovering from narcissistic abuse can be difficult and painful, but it is ultimately worth it. By going through the process, individuals can learn to appreciate themselves, understand their own worth, and develop the strength and resilience to navigate through life's challenges. They can develop the ability to read people and recognize trouble spots before they become major crises. They can learn to set boundaries. They can learn to be more compassionate and empathetic towards narcissistic abuse survivors. And they can develop a deeper understanding of themselves and others. I'm praying that this video helps you in some significant way. Leave a comment below and tell me what you think. Enjoy your day.